Welcome back to Ordinary Voices. This is episode 2. I just got done talking with the guest, Paige. We talked all things running, marathons, goal setting, intentions, consistency, all that good stuff. It was a really great conversation. Paige is one of my best friends, so kind of like episode 1, bringing Hunter on there. Still working in like being more comfortable on a mic and asking questions and being on a camera. Keeping that momentum in episode 2. Paige is someone that I've had a lot of deep conversations with in the past. I thought she'd be a great guest to come on and talk about her recent goals and recent successes and kind of her perspective on setting goals and working with people to help achieve their goals. I think this is a really cool conversation. So please stay till the end. Leave a like, leave a comment, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. But thank you for following along and checking this out. I hope you enjoy. Paige, what's up?
Hello, Kobe. Nice to see you, buddy.
You too. Early morning
Yeah, yeah.
for
Thanks for
me.
waking up with me today.
Yep. Yeah. You got some stuff planned today and this weekend, so that
hmm
works. I'm just happy that you're able to do this. So
Of course. Yes. Thanks for having me on.
yeah. So last weekend marathon, or was it 2 weekends ago? I actually forgot.
Last weekend. Yeah, it
Okay.
all kind of blurs together, but last weekend, it's kind of crazy when I think back to it. I'm like, oh, that already, yeah, it's like it's already been 8 days,
One
but it's
one
like,
week on the dot.
yeah, pretty much.
How's your, because I texted you Sunday or
hmm
Monday and you said you were not doing well
Yeah.
body. How are you doing now?
Stairs are now okay. I'm able to go up and down without looking like I'm in pain, so that's good. Overall energy levels are back up, still sleeping a lot, but like day to day, I feel good and hungry still. So, but I'm fine with that. That's been kind of fun, just eating whatever.
Did you run this week?
No, I took the whole week off.
Oh,
So,
whoa. Okay.
yeah, whole week
When
off.
when's
I
the
have a
last
little bit of
time
what?
you have a little bit of a foot thing?
A little bit of a foot thing. I got done with my race, took my race shoes off, put my UFOs on, those recovery sandals, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna feel so good. Stood up and I'm like, oh, I have a little bit of that plantar fasciitis and
Uh,
some tendonitis on the left side of my foot. And I think it's just from being in speed shoes for 26 miles, but
for
it's
sure.
calmed down pretty well. But I was like, nope, we're just going to shut her down for the week and enjoy a full on recovery week. So,
When is the last time you got to do that?
oh, it's been 2 years, maybe.
Because I mean, like, yeah, my goal with this conversation is to kind of talk about your huge marathon blocks that you just did because you ran 2 of them, and
hmm
then just kind of like what you learned from them, rewards of just setting goals. But let's talk about how long this marathon block was because it was a while that you were building up for this.
Yeah, I mean, so I decided on grandma's last October when the registration became available. I went to school in Duluth, which I know we'll touch on later too. But this was one that I'm like, this would be perfect timing. Can train through the whole winter in the UP, kind of prepare, on the treadmill in terms of heat training too.
Yeah.
In Marquette, we're not going to get a lot of warm days before June 21st. So
No.
I just loaded up a bunch of long runs in the winter and strength training, and then we got into Boston Marathon in April, ran that, but then recovered quick from that one. I had like a week off in terms of running, but a little bit of like 2 to 3 mile shakeouts just to kind of
Good.
move that lactic acid, and then hop right back on the train for grandma's. And I was a little worried about that transition, but it flowed nicely
Yeah,
and
you felt
injury.
like you were able to like, yeah, pretty much fully recover from Boston, which is April, and then yeah, grandma's is now June, so April, May, and it was like a mid-May run, so you got like 2.5 months still, right? Or like
Yeah,
two
about
months.
9 weeks. So I was like, I think this can go, but that was the closest gap I've ever done between two big events like that.
Yeah.
So I was obviously a little nervous, but every run, every workout, like I felt like my coach and I like really had a good system of the bulk of that work was done, in the winter. And
For
then
sure.
this little 2 months was like recover, and just do some tune-up workouts. So there wasn't a lot of bulk to it that like put a lot of fatigue on my body. It was more about just like bouncing back and sharpening up more so.
Okay. Okay. And so you decided you were doing grandma's in, said October?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And Boston was April, but
Hmm.
you've known you were doing Boston for like since last Boston, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So when did you start? Right? Because you had some goals going into Boston that we've talked about
Mhm.
before, just you and I. And then if that didn't like go as well as you thought it was going to, then you were going to do grandma's.
Hmm.
So like I guess first goal was Boston. When
Yeah.
did you start that build for Boston?
That build for Boston started on January 1.
Okay.
I had, been running consistently November and December, a couple, 30 miles a week. And for me, that was enough to then catapult into a full on like 50 to 60 mile a week training plan.
Okay.
So I began January 1. And the goal for Boston was just break 3 hours.
Mhm.
Um, and came up a little short that day, ran 3:05:39, which ended up being a PR. And the PR in Boston, I will always be grateful for because that course is
Hard.
not friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it was a great day, and that's the one too where it was like get into the race and see how things kind of roll. And I felt really good till 14, but that's when all the hills start. And
Hmm.
um, unfortunately, I just didn't have that kick. But during it, it was like just reframe and try to PR. And then after that, it was now let's get ready for grandma's.
Yeah. Do you feel do you feel fulfilled now that you did Boston and grandma's and like you ran two really good races? I guess if you look at like what your goal was, you didn't do that, but like you had two PRs, two big PRs, like in a very short window, and like just ran two really good races. Sounds like grandma's was a little bit warmer than I think people were expecting just across the board. Like you
Mhm.
ran two really good races.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm proud of it. I got really close to breaking 3 hours at grandma's. So I
Yeah.
ran 3:01:16 there, and it was super hot. There was all kinds of other factors that came into play in terms of weather and delays, and um, I looking back, I'm like to have done that two big PRs within 9 weeks of each other, and again, being just grateful for having my body hold up through it all too. It just happened the stars have to align for PRs to come through on
Sure.
marathon day, and they did. And I think a lot of it, I got to look back on how many miles I put in over the years too.
Yeah.
I kind of allowed my body to recover and be ready to go in that short time frame.
That's funny. I felt like your coach just came out there when you were explaining it. We'll talk about your coaching more, but
As the listeners will see, I think my whole running life is so intertwined between work and daily life and coaching. It's like it
like
all kind
it
of blends.
is big time. There's a lot of like lines that cross in a good way. Like
Mhm.
your life for the most part is running and surrounded by like all that community, which is I think cool.
Mhm.
But I think last thing with like the marathons is yeah, you've had a pretty like intentional big block.
Mhm.
That sub 3 is still on the radar.
Yeah.
What do
So,
you yeah, it's still there. What do you think that you like what was your biggest takeaway from this block and I guess these two races that when you're ready to do another build, you're like, oh, I think I would maybe do this differently or keep everything the same. But like what's your biggest takeaway from this last block?
I think my biggest takeaway is that it's there, like
Yeah.
I for me as a runner, like I was never very confident as a young runner in my ability. And I think now like I've seen it on paper with the marathons back to back, right? Short time frame and having these two big PRs on relatively tougher days. Boston's, like I said, is not a PR course. And then grandma's with a weather and a 30-minute delay and just battling the heat elements that we were not used to. It was 46 degrees where I live in Marquette the week before, and then it was 85 on race day and 95% humidity. So it's just like dealing with that. I was like, how can I not be proud of this 301? It was the
Mhm.
best way to run a 301, honestly, because like I think any other day, if it would have been 40 degrees, I would have been a little bit more upset that sub three didn't happen. But
Yeah.
overall, I think going into the next build, like I just want to keep everything the same. I think coming away with no injury is always a big thing. So if you find that training plan that works, like roll with it. I
Hmm.
think the confidence is there. It's just waiting for the right day. And if anything, I'm grateful for it too, because now it keeps me hungry into the next one. Part of me wanted to just like put it to bed, break three at grandma's, and like take a few years or more off of marathoning.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have a little bit of a break, but I'm not that goal oriented person where like I see it, I want it done, I want to just do it. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, but otherwise, I think just keeping everything the same and just rolling with it and just,
Cool.
going into races confident now that like it's there. It's just, making the move at the right time or um, just hoping that it's good weather.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's roll right into, like you said it, which is perfect. You talked about confidence as a young runner.
Mhm.
Where did your running journey start? I guess like, and you don't need to go all the way back, but like maybe like high school, middle school, when you started taking it like seriously, like, oh, I really enjoy running, or I want to do this longer than high school or something.
Yeah, yeah. So in middle school was definitely like I think where it clicked for me for track. Obviously, I ran track and cross country, but track was more my thing. I really enjoyed running the 100 and the 200. I never even ran the 400 until high school. I was like full on. I'm a sprinter. Well, I'm about 5'8", and I got longer legs. And my coach is like, you need to run the 400 and the 800. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. And not a,
know.
not a sprinter.
Yeah, I'm like, ah. So I leveled up to those events then in high school. And I gotta give credit to my brother. He was running and I was more of a basketball player.
Mhm.
Um back when I earlier on and watching him run at his cross country meets. Like I kind of wanted to be like him and I wanted
Mhm.
to I just like the running culture, so I wanted to be a part of that and just watching the support that a cross country team um has for each other. And then what I loved about track was everyone comes to the table essentially with different abilities, different strengths, and now we're all trying to work to this collective goal of team championships, winning certain meets. But it also has that individual aspect too, where, you could have a good day or your friend could have a good day, but, it's all on the clock or all on the measuring tape, so
And
it's not effective.
you're still like, yeah, you mentioned it there. It is performance based, like an individual level, but there's also the team aspect, like
Hmm.
with cross country and track, which especially in like high school, you're getting like hockey players, soccer players, like you're getting this big mix of people that makes it like, I think early on, a cool community. And then as your career has progressed, which you can keep talking about, like it just gets bigger and better, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think I liked running more overall than basketball. So when I made that decision to focus, it went more towards running just because I liked that it was one up to me on that day, right? Like nobody else can control my performance but myself. And there's comfort in that. There's some fear in that, but
For
I
sure.
really liked that part of it. But then I liked having that, like you said, a little bit of a dynamic of who's on the team and just the dynamic of personalities that it comes with too. Long jumpers are different than your distance runners and
Mhm.
shot putters are different than your sprinters. So it's fun to get that melting pot together of personalities.
For sure. So yeah, you said kind of middle school realized you like it, and then high school decided to kind of dive in and push basketball off the side,
Yep.
and then obviously already mentioned you started your collegiate career at Duluth. But when in high school did you kind of realize that, oh, maybe I can keep going, and that you want to keep going after high school?
Yeah. So my sophomore year, I broke the 400-meter school record. It was a 25-year-old record. So that was really exciting and kind of like, well, one, I had eaten three cookies like right before the race, like 30 minutes before. Because my coach was like, Paige, this one, this race today, I did a triathlon that day with some special needs kids at our school. And I was out in the heat all day. And he's like, Paige, just run this for fun, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. But what I took away from that, and then having eaten 3 cookies like right before the race and just being like, oh, whatever, is to not take it so seriously is sometimes your
Mhm.
best because you shut this piece off. And so I went and had a great race in the 400 and started acquiring some letters to different schools. So it was my sophomore year that I was really like, oh, this could maybe be something.
You might have something here.
Yeah, we might have something here. So I had that fire under me. And again, I like track better. So I was still more of that speedy kid. Cross country was, I couldn't get myself to love distance running yet.
Yeah,
There's pain involved with that. There's pain involved with the 400 too, but it was much longer.
temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really just was not distance. I don't think I was distance oriented in my mindset yet.
hmm Which is
Um,
a huge piece of it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going for how long at this pace? And I think I was afraid. So there's part of me that looks back in my high school career, and I think I could have done a little better in my cross country career. Had some adversity. Obviously, my father passed away my junior year of my high school career, and that was tough. And I think how I dealt with that was actually shying away from running in pain,
hmm
and I didn't know how to push myself. I did enough in order to get a scholarship to go to University of Minnesota Duluth and run. But that's kind of how it all kind of led into it. It's like I look back at my high school career and I think I could have worked harder, but I in cross country and pushed myself harder, but I didn't know how given some things that I was dealing with.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, you still pushed enough and like still, I guess, showed up enough to like perform and still get a college scholarship and be able to continue. So after high school, went to University of Minnesota Duluth. You
Mhm.
ran there for a little bit. You also ran at Northern Michigan.
Mhm.
Um, why don't you touch on that piece a little bit? Yeah, your experience at UMD and then going over to NMU, and you're still in Marquette, so you seem
Yeah.
to have enjoyed your time there.
Yeah, so I get to UMD, see fall of 2016, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I kind of came in as an underdog, and I can say that because my coach had told me that, like, you're kind of like on the bubble, of making conference rosters and all that. And that for some reason really lit a fire. I think because going into a place where I didn't know anybody and wanting to prove something, like I can offer something here, um, that lit a fire in me for sure. And so I was a little bit on the underdog side, and cross country was more about just preparing us for track, a lot of us mid distance runners. So again, I ran that 400 and 800. So it was more just getting mileage and preparing for the track season, and got into the track season. And I was running 400s and 800s pretty well. And I just kind of kept clicking along and um, ended up having a really big race in the 600 meter, which is kind of a weird event that in
Okay.
between 4 and 8. And my coach is like, if you can run a 57 in the 400, we'll put you on the distance medley relay team, which that was a big deal at UMD. And that was with two women, Emmy Trost and Brianna Colpinson, who were NCAA All-Americans, like 8, 9 time All-Americans. And
Oh
they were
wow.
running the 1200 leg and the mile leg. And it was we had 2 open spots in the 4 and the 8. And it ended up being me and my training partner, Elizabeth Kais, who took those 2 spots for the
That's sweet.
400 and the 800. So it was kind of one of those, like, these two upperclassmen were so good that it was like, they're going to go to nationals. It's just a matter of who's going to be in those middle. And we
Yeah.
were just happy to be there.
Yeah.
So we make it on the relay team. We get down to Birmingham, Alabama, where nationals is being held. And just like I said, happy to be there, trying not to mess up. You're in a huge field with all these top runners. And that's when things clicked for me too, of like, I want to be here someday,
Yeah.
either again as a relay or on my own, and or just really lit my fire for how much I love track and field, and wanting to bring my best every day. So ran that. We became second in the nation that year. So first team All American.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
By 1 second, but Emmy ran like a 4:30 mile to close it, and she gave it her all, and it was so exciting. But that was a great moment. And then that kind of, like I said, propelled that training into the summer of,
hmm
oh, we really want to be good at this thing. So um,
Cool.
Yeah, ended up another year at UMD, worked at a running store there, Duluth Running Company, which kind of exposed me to marathons and ultras and halves and,
Yeah.
the big events. And I'm like, I'm never doing this. I
Full
had no
circle.
then.
Yeah.
And ended up having a coaching change going into the fall of my junior year. And for me, I felt that it was best that I left UMD.
Mhm.
Though I loved the community, I loved the school, I loved teammates and friends I had had there. Um, but I went on Google and I looked up places that I could possibly transfer to, and Marquette popped up, and um, it looked just like Duluth in Google Images. So
Yep. It's very similar.
I called Jenny Ryan, the head coach, and I'm like, hey, here's my story. Like, would you need a 400, 800 runner at all? And it just worked out well. And she's like, yeah, when can you get here? And this was on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I was like, oh, I could be there this weekend, I guess. And okay. And so I got there on a Saturday after talking to her. And yeah, and I landed at Northern, had never been here or in Marquette, and never traveled up here. So it was like sight unseen, pick a school, hope that it works out. And my whole thought process was when I got here, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like it here. It felt very small. Duluth was about 80 to 85,000 people at the time that I was there. I'm from Green Bay originally, so I'm from like bigger, not cities, but bigger areas,
Yeah.
proximate to cities. And
Good old
came
Marquette,
I just
19,000.
wasn't sure. Yep. I remember telling my mom, like, I'm going to get my degree and sayonara.
Yep. However, not the case. So, yeah, you were at Duluth, made your way to Marquette for NMU, competed there. It wasn't like COVID wasn't a thing. So it was just 2 years at NMU, right?
2 years. COVID did end my senior year, though. I had that
Okay.
weird. Yeah. So my senior year of track was COVID.
Okay.
And
But like you didn't get like a COVID year like all the athletes after that,
no,
really. Okay.
no.
Okay. So yeah, 4 good years. Um, and then yeah, I mean now you're working at Queen City, you're co-owner of Queen City. You
Mhm.
started there, was it like right when you got to Marquette?
Yeah. So I got to Marquette in 2018, the fall, and I started at Queen City in May of 2019.
Okay.
Once school got out, yeah, I was looking for a summer job. So
Okay. And we literally could do a whole nother episode on Queen City because that is a whole nother,
we can.
yeah, get Kevin, get John, get
Oh,
everyone.
yeah.
But yeah, you're co-owner of Queen City, which I think is awesome, and your journey to get there is awesome. But you also coach other
Mhm.
athletes, and I'm curious like how that changes your perspective on the running that you do and like your goals and like your approach to training now. You coach, how many athletes do you coach? I guess let's start there.
Right now I have about 10. I just got off of a big block. I had 17 just prior to grandmas. I just had a
Oh,
bunch of athletes doing grandmas. So I got a little bit of a dip right now. But I coach anywhere between 10 to 20, I would say at a time. 20's been my max for private coaching.
okay.
Um, yeah,
Okay. How do you, I mean, you enjoy it? What's your favorite part about it?
I really enjoy, well, because I coach a lot of marathons right now, and a lot of marathon oriented athletes. And I
Yeah.
think my favorite part is watching someone do their first one and realizing like there's so much more that your body can do, right? Like in a marathon, it's like, how am I gonna? But once that you get done and you cross that line and you look back and they're like, oh my gosh, like the training that goes into it, the mindset that you have to have, and then the execution, like it's a really cool thing. I think once they finish that race and they're like, wow, like I've been doing this for 3 to 4 months, typically 4 months of training and leading up to this big moment. And I think my favorite part too is helping runners achieve their goals from a time standpoint, but
Mhm.
also realizing that there's so much you can learn about yourself along the way in that training cycle,
For sure.
and it comes down to like respecting the distance, and just being like aware that anything can happen that day, and at the end of the day, you're probably going to learn more and appreciate more from your journey there
For
than
sure.
just the race. So,
Because I don't think that people who like, I think I should have looked this stat up, but like the amount of people who are running in the United States, really just the world, but like the United States has grown a lot in the last few years.
Mhm.
And then like with all these influencers out there, it's like, oh, I'm training for sub 3 marathon or training for my first marathon or whatever it is. But I don't think people realize how much goes into those blocks and like one, the mindset, but two, like the commitment that you need to have.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for you as a coach, seeing these people do it for the first time and maybe they have a time distance or maybe it's just like, let's do a marathon. And then
Mhm.
for you as a coach, you're like, whoa, that's cool seeing these people like fully appreciate the work that they just put in for like 4, 5, 3 months, whatever it is. I'm sure that's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's time away from family. It's time away from, I don't want to say work, but in a way, because
Yeah,
you have a whole other focus, and like it's taking a lot of time away from relaxation and sometimes more of the fun personal time, you could argue.
for sure.
Um, Instead of, hanging around on a Sunday morning, having a slow get up, you're already been out there for an hour and a half to 2 hours
Yep.
on a long run. So I think that's the biggest piece that a lot of people don't see until they're in it, is
Hmm.
the time commitment thing. And that's very rewarding to look back and think about the amount of, not just miles, but the amount of hours, or even like you break it down to minutes of time that you spent
Yeah.
training for something.
Yeah.
That's a huge commitment to yourself.
Yeah, I like how Strava shows obviously distance too, but I look at that sometimes if I'm just like bored in bed. I'm like, the last 3 months. Let's look at how much time
Mhm.
I'm not training for anything, but like let's just look at the amount of time I put into running. And
Mhm.
it's like with no training, I'm doing like 20 base miles a week, and it's still like 3 hours to oh yeah, like it's like 3 hours a week that I'm running every week, which is like a little chunk of time, but like that adds up over months and months and months and months that you're committing to doing something.
Mhm.
Um, well, I'll ask you then, seeing your athletes do that and like, yeah, appreciating the time that they've put in and the work and being fulfilled when they finally cross the finish line. How has that changed your perspective on your own running? Or like your approach to how you're taking things?
I think it's good. Like, even though I do coach, it's like there's so many reminders that I find from talking to my athletes too. And I think the biggest thing for me is in my own training of enjoying the process of some of the days too, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it now, and I think I touched on it a little bit about the Boston to Grandmas. That transition wouldn't have been good for me, a 9-week transition 3 years ago. But
Yeah.
it's because of the consistency of like building that aerobic base, is why I was able to do it. So sometimes it's not just like a 4-month fix or a 4-month process. It can be years. So I think that, and then also paying attention to my body. Like, sometimes when I get little injuries like this foot thing I had, it's like, well, what would I tell, so and so to do? Take time
Mm-hmm.
off, So it's good
Mm-hmm.
reminder myself, um, and to just slow down and listen to your body, because at the end of the day, like, if your body's not functioning well, it's not going to translate well into running. So you got to just pay attention to those little things.
Yeah. Yeah. I sounds like it makes you or holds you a little more accountable to like that rest and just like keeping up on your body because that's exactly what you would tell your athletes.
Yeah.
Um, I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about and kind of tie everything together is just goal setting and like your perspective on it and how important is that to people, do you think? And yeah, what's your approach to goal setting and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I love talking about goal setting, and I've coached everywhere from like middle school athletes to the
Yeah.
adults, and it's fun because everybody has a goal, right? At some point, and I think if having somebody that can come alongside you to help you reach that, whether it's a coach, a family, a friend, a supporter, um, is huge, from accountability standpoint, but just like I said, getting that support. But if you have something that you want to accomplish, having a goal, writing it down, and then taking the necessary steps, like those SMART goals in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it
Like
it's
they're real.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's exciting, and to look back and be like, I did it. It may have took me, like the sub 3 that I'm trying to do. It might take me another year or 2 or 3, but it's there, and it's,
Yeah.
and I think it gives a little bit of excitement. It gives um, you the ability to see like how much you can push yourself, and that's doesn't have to be physical or mental. It can be anything.
Yeah.
Um, but from how I approach it in a marathon specific, standpoint or running standpoint is I always give my athletes an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal,
Hmm.
especially in the marathon because so much can happen. There's a lot of time out there. And I think it's important that, if things fall apart at mile 8, well, you're just going to stop. I mean, hopefully
Yeah.
not if you have an injury, why are you got to keep going. So it's having that ability to quick reframe your mindset and go, okay, A is out. So can I get to
Yeah.
B,
Yeah.
and you hang on to B for a little bit, and coach should execute how that would look in on that day of how do we do that, whether it's a
Hmm.
nutrition thing, adjusting pace, um, adjusting what you're looking at. I just think there's so
Yeah.
many little intricate things you can do, and then if not B, fall back on C.
Yep.
And I think it's so big to have that. It saved me multiple times. I mean, Boston, I was ready to like throw in the towel at 17, 18. And I remember Anna was like, my girlfriend, she was like, you can PR still. And I'm like, thank God you said that. Okay,
Like that's a great point.
that's gonna get me through this right now. So, and it did. I PR'd, and it doesn't always happen that way, but I think it's so huge to have a few different, I don't want to call them backups, but just having different goals. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
This doesn't go today because you can't control everything.
Exactly. Like, no, I agree. Like, I'm a very routine person, and like we both are very goal oriented person or goal oriented people, and we like to like look forward to things and work towards things.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've learned like over my time of getting exposed to running, or I don't know, getting through grad school or starting a new job, is like I think those little goals are honestly more important than like the big goal. So like let's use the marathon for anyone. If it's a sub 3, like that's probably not going to happen on the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people that like, maybe in certain cases it makes sense where like I see some like, pretty elite college runners, they jump into the marathon and their first go is like a 250 or 245. Okay, that's like realistic to an extent. But for someone that's like, I don't know, this is really new to them, they've never pushed themselves to a sub 3 marathon or that pace or that distance. It's their first time running a marathon at all. And they're like, oh, I'm going sub 3.
Yeah.
That might not happen. So then, yeah, what's goal B? Like if it doesn't happen, what's going to be the thing that does happen that still makes you like fulfilled with your process and like all the work that you just put in?
Well, because otherwise, it's a long way to the finish line. If you just
yeah, if you just have one, unless you're just like a nuthead and like that's just what you need to get by is like sub 3, sub 3, sub 3, whatever it is. But like those little goals that like people talk about compounding all the time. And
yeah,
what do you, is it stacking hay barrels? Is that what you say?
stacking hay bales.
Yeah. Everyone else in the running world. Yeah. Everyone else in the world says bricks, stacking bricks. And you say hay bales in true Wisconsin fashion. Yeah. It's like the counting cows story.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty much what I had and what I wanted to cover. Yeah, I've been rooting on the sidelines for the marathon build and the races, and literally have your bib tracking thing up every race. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that like you're fulfilled with the build, and there's more to come.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been a fun ride, and we'll just keep on going. It's there. It's just waiting for it to happen. So,
yep, sounds good. Talk to you later.
all right. Thanks, Kobe.
Yep.